Great. We are working. Awesome. Okay. G'day, Performance Under Pressure online community. Welcome. This should be a great conversation today. Today we have Sarah Niblack all the way from Paris in France. And yes, if you've seen her recent Facebook posts as well, like she showed some balcony shots, and at her balcony, you can see the Eiffel Tower. Like, you can't get much better than that, can you, Sarah?
No. Hi, Mark. Thanks. Yeah, I just moved, and while the photos may be misleading, it's a dirty lie. I get to see the other side of Paris from my balcony, but I am super lucky that in my résidence, there's a rooftop pool, and that is for real, and I can invite people, so please send me a very nice email, and we'll see if we can get that set up.
Okay, right. So when can I come over and use your rooftop pool? Like, am I invited over now?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. You can be here in what, like 14 hours?
Might be a little bit longer than that, but anyway.
Let's do it tomorrow.
Sure. All right. Well, I just thought I'd have a chat with you and see what sort of work you've been up to. I think we met probably a few months ago. How many months ago would have that been? 6 months, maybe?
A few
Probably
months. More than a couple.
Yes, yeah. But
more than a couple, less than a lot.
Yeah. But I've been following your work and how you're doing very similar to work than what I'm doing as well. So I thought, hey, we may as well jump on and have a conversation. But I did come across one article online where you've had a little quote. So I thought I'd read this out just to sort of set the scene for those of you who don't know Sarah. So I'll just read this quote out. It's, one of the most undervalued components of musical education is what occurs in the practice room. During those numerous practice hours, we are left alone, vulnerable, ill-equipped, and under severe pressure from all sides. I want to empower individuals in their own practice so that their teachers could transmit more essential knowledge and students would not feel excluded from some inaccessible secret. There is no great mystery. Presently, we do not educate students how to practice, to integrate what their teachers are communicating, or how to organise their own thoughts into healthy, productive, scientifically supported practices. Thus, Spark Practice has emerged as a solution as a result of my own experience, that of my pupils, and an increasing number of Spark practices. I want personal excellence to be accessible, and I believe that every educational institution should support their students with tools and practices to maximise their education and blossom into their best selves. I'd like to be a part of that discussion. And from my perspective, I would like to be part of that discussion too, hence why we have joined up today. So you are amazing, Sarah. Do you want to explain something of that? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? All sorts of bits and pieces that you get up to.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my MO is I want to get art to people and I want people to feel like themselves. And my background, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, a beautiful, musically rich, outdoorsy town. And I grew up playing sports and being exposed to music in ways that I wasn't even really aware. I ended up in high school being a rower at a pretty high level, and then became a Division I scholarship rower, which is how I paid for my schooling to go to CCM, which in the States, it's a pretty well-known conservatory. Mm-hmm. And I feel really lucky to be able to have done that. But at the same time, when I got to CCM, because I had this kind of weird background, I didn't really feel understood, and I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing, and I had no idea that practicing was important, and everybody kept practicing their solo stuff, and I'm like, but we get to play with other people, this is amazing. And so I spent all my time in all of the ensembles and very little time in the practice room, and just the whole paradigm was totally different than what I'd experienced with elite coaches in the sports space. And because in rowing, you know, especially at an elite level, we have VO2 max sessions. We have coaching for probably 60% of the time that we're working out. We have people following us in boats. We have cross training. We have monitored cross training. Like, you know, I had a journal where I wrote my resting heart rate as soon as I woke up. Now I have a watch that does it, but you know,
much easier. Go.
But also part of the deal was having that structure and having that support.
Yeah.
And when I got to the elite music space and didn't have that, because I'm me, the story that I told myself was I'm being left out of the conversation.
That's really interesting, because I mean, I can imagine that having coaches around you so much, do you, in some ways, you just rely on that for your improvement? And with music, it's so much reliance on yourself to improve because you're by yourself for so long.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Often what happens in the sports space is that somebody else is responsible for kind of plotting your story arc, plotting your training, conceptualizing how you're going to get better so that you bring your A game at 10 a.m. on championship day or whatever. And so all you're responsible to do is show up healthy with a good attitude and ready to give it your all because you're in good hands. In the music space, we have all of this information of like how to play our instruments and an expectation to be perfect, kind of, sort of, but don't be perfect because it's not possible, but also be perfect. And how the heck am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Nobody told me how. I don't get it. Like, and then people are like, oh, well, just slow practice. How do I do that? Like, what does it mean? I don't know. And so it's like, okay, now I understand after all of this time of, you know, putting all this stuff together, that it's like, great, slow practice is totally helpful. It's one strategy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And we have all these other strategies.
Yeah, I think, and we're very similar with this as well. I find there's a lot of educators that teach what to do, and they give you all this, again, lots of information. They say, we need to do this, we need to do that. You need to practice scales, you need to do these exercises. But in terms of actually how to go about doing that in an effective way that you're actually going to retain and hold on to, I think that's a different story, which is kind of where Spark Practice comes in. So how did you come about developing your method into Spark Practice? Was that just through all of just filtering everything that you'd experienced and then combining it all together, or how about did you do that?
Well, first of all, I think it is absolutely important to have these conversations, and I'm loving being part of this community and seeing so many people like you reaching out to people, especially like earlier and earlier, so that we can have this sort of idea and training and concept and all the stuff that we can bring what is my most central word to this process, intentionality.
Yeah.
Like if we do something with intention, it's going to be better.
Yep.
Whatever domain. And so to see this sort of, you know, we call it deliberate practice. It's just because we're like thinking about what we're doing. Right. But when we do that with intention, it just like levels up immediately. Yeah. And so thank you also for doing what you're doing. And I mean, like you've brought in so many people into this conversation. Yeah, it is.
I just find it interesting and fun just to meet other people and see where they need help. And I think we're, again, on the same page. I think a lot of people are sort of a bit miffed at how to go about their practice and how to get that intention as well. It's like, I mean, I look at intention, a lot of it is like, what are you motivated by? I know a lot of teachers say, practice this piece. You don't have a choice. And that's where sort of that intention is kind of eroded, I think, because we're just playing music that we don't really, not 100% into, but if you find
it's funny that you say that because that's exactly where Spark Practice came from.
Yep.
To come back to your question, like,
yeah.
I had all of this intention, but I didn't know where to put it. Yeah, and so it turned into frustration because I was just spinning my wheels being like, okay, well, I'm here. I think that, I know I'm a hard worker, but also I don't even care anymore because I don't know what I'm doing doesn't have an effect. And it's not all that it was just like results driven, but it was also nothing was it wasn't proportional to the effort that I was putting in. What I was getting out of it wasn't proportional to the effort I was putting in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wasn't seeing how my work translated into feeling good on stage or having better performances or, you know, feeling like I knew what I was doing in lessons or, you know, learning something, keeping it as I learn other things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so all of these things were kind of falling apart. And, you know, oh, woe is me. In sports, it was like, oh, come on, little Sarah, like, let's go do this thing, just sit in the boat and then do this thing that I'm telling you to do. I'm like, oh, great, I can do that. And then, you know, with a couple of years of having that style of coaching and just that style of support of like, okay, here's what we're going to do. This is why you're doing it. You have a mini cycle and a macro cycle. And we can talk about what that is and all of that. But, you know, all of these things from sports training. And I understood what a conversion phase was. And I understood what all these things were. And then I became autonomous because I had these tools and I knew, like, now I have friends who are like, oh, can you help me like structure a workout? Like, absolutely. I'm way more confident about that than I am sometimes teaching music.
Yeah. That's interesting that you talk about being autonomous as well. As I get the impression from a lot of teachers, they tell students what to do and then expect that autonomy will eventually happen. So that's interesting. That how did your teachers do that, or how did your coaches do that, so that they gradually shifted the responsibility onto yourself so you could make your own decisions?
Well, you're totally right that teachers do that, and we see that because, I mean, obviously it works to some degree because there are so many professional musicians.
Totally. Yeah.
There's so many people who are excellent at so many things in the music space and elsewhere. Like, even though we're not using neuroscience and we're not intentionally using neuroscience and intentionally using
accidentally using it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are until we bump around and we're like, okay, this seems to kind of work.
Yeah.
And so our teachers were taught that way. Other teachers were taught that way. It helped really slice out the elite opportunities as well, because, you know, some of my favorite practice strategies came from Isaac Stern. To somebody who grew up in like Podunk, Indiana, I don't know, or wherever, like there are a lot of places that have less access to these things, less so with the internet. But are those the kind of people who are going to be taught these techniques and then, you know, somebody coaches them to make sure that they understand it? No. However, we have so many more tools now to just accept ourselves and be nice to ourselves and be totally comfortable with the fact that we suck at stuff. Because learning is the process of going from something that we can't do to something we can do. And the first step is to acknowledge that we're going to be terrible at it.
Yeah, God.
Yeah.
What was that quote? I put up a post yesterday on the Performance Under Pressure online community about going from failure to success. I mean, you have to suck to start off with, basically. I love saying to my students as well, it's like, my first lesson, it was a disaster. I think I couldn't even play a note. I wasn't born as a trumpet player. So I'm sure, Sarah, maybe you were born as a viola player. I don't know, but
I may be born as that, but to become it takes a lifetime.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, and like my first lesson with Kawasaki, like my teacher in college was Masao Kawasaki, who amazing pedagogue, was the assistant of Dorothy DeLay, like all the things, totally amazing person. I get into the room and he's like, okay, I looked at your video and it sounds good, but you don't know how to play.
Okay.
And like, that was kind of basically my first lesson. And, you know, we can take that in a million ways, because I felt safe with him and I felt like I was in good hands with him and I felt like he was going to help me solve the problem that I had, which was not knowing how to play viola. My attitude was, yeah, I know, that's why I'm here. But, yeah, you know, if we don't have that context, it could also be, and now I'm going to burn my instrument and be traumatized by this thing, and it's going to follow me around. There's so many people who had experiences that, you know, and he followed it up very quickly with like, we got a plan, like it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know, so he didn't leave me hanging either, because he's a good teacher and he knows how to support that. And he saw also that I needed a little reassurance because he just rocked my world.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
But
I think that's interesting as well with students or with people in general. I mean, when they're high in confidence, you can say stuff like that and that's okay. Whereas someone who is like right at their low point, it's probably not the best idea. So he could probably sense that anyway, which is a skill in itself for teachers.
I would make a little distinction between confidence and curiosity. Because I wouldn't say that I've ever been somebody who's confident unless I know my foundation is solid. And, you know, what he was telling me was that, no, your foundation isn't solid.
Yeah.
And if I was relying just on confidence, that would have shattered my world.
Yeah.
You know, but because I tend to be a very curious person, it's like, okay, I hear you. What's next?
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah.
You know, and because, so I think that's an important distinction, which also takes us into kind of what's helpful in practicing and just in practicing life in the practice room. Because, you know, I know you talk a lot about this too, the difference between performance brain and practice brain.
Yeah.
And so having this curiosity is the thing that helps us move forward and moves through the feeling of like, oh, I'm terrible at this. If we stop with the feeling of, oh, I'm terrible at this, there is no way forward.
Yeah.
But if we're curious about like, how could I be slightly less terrible at this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we can move through that, you know, while we're practicing what spaghetti sticks to the wall in performance brain, this creative ideation, free brain.
Yeah.
So,
it's just that barrier of judgment that so many people get stuck on, I think. And they just judge and they go, that was bad. I'll just play it again and hope it gets better.
Yeah. It's true. Okay. Please, people, scientific method. You don't need to be a nerd. Just a little bit of scientific method. When you do something, reflect. Right before you go like slam through it again and again and again, just a little bit like, what could I do better? Be the little DJ in your head.
Yep.
And then do it again. Please don't just like, yeah.
Mindless repetition. While I think about it, with everyone listening, I have no idea how many people are listening, if there's any, but hopefully there are. But if you are, and if you have any questions along the way, please write them in the Performance Under Pressure online community chat. And I will hopefully try and find them. And so if you do have any questions for Sarah, then please write them in.
Yeah, and also on Instagram, if anybody has any questions for either me or Mark, like, let's have it.
This is all about you, though, Sarah. This is you're the center stage here. So.
And now I'm going to turn red and like shrivel.
Oh,
no,
sorry, I shouldn't have said
practice. I have practiced. I know what's up. But yeah, so Spark Practice came through sort of like all of this filter of being really scared and frustrated and not seeing a lot of progress, because even though, you know, I just didn't understand the game either. And it kind of helps to know a little bit more about like what conservatory is for.
Yep.
Like, to help, you know, all of that. But even in that, and then coming out of conservatory was just a whole new world, because you get out and all of a sudden you don't have the structure that you did have, and you're ill-equipped in a practice room. And so many people that I know just nosedive.
Yep.
Either they get a job right away, or we nosedive.
Yeah.
And then get into this sort of like perpetual audition gig, you know, wash cycle.
Yep.
That like doesn't have any soap and is just kind of like
just, you know, throws you around.
Yeah, like a rickety pony kind of thing, kind of situation. And many people live in the rickety pony space and don't really feel like they have the agency to move to another space. And a lot of people in the educational space feel like, okay, I kind of understand what I'm getting. How can I go further? Like, I'm putting all these hours in and I have all these classes and I have all these responsibilities, and I'm just not breaking through. Mm-hmm. So all of this has been on my mind for many, many years, because I've been taking auditions and doing concerts and teaching and all of that. And I've been exploring the relationship between elite sports and music for many, many years. I had some conversations about it with other people in this space, and like in 2014, I found old messages and diagrams and stuff. And it was always kind of on pause until last year. My best friend and I did the first edition of the Viola Practice Camp, which is an online practice camp for hotshot teens in the UK. Cool. And yeah, and the structure of that was that we had a group warm-up, practice or lesson sessions, lunch, how to practice, practice or lessons, and then a masterclass at the end of the day. Uh-huh. And the masterclass, by the way, is not this typical masterclass of, I'm just going to go be better than everybody else. No, you bring the things that don't work, and then everybody comes in and puts our heads together, and like it builds a really nice vibe, and also we solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But we found out really quickly that she is a master at building violists from the ground up.
Okay.
And I am a ninja at practicing.
Awesome.
And so, yeah.
It's like your powers combine.
Earth, wind,
yes.
fire,
I was thinking that. Good old Captain Planet. Yep.
Go there. It's totally cool. So coming out of that, and I've had to learn to play 3 times. I learned the first time, I learned after a 5-year break, and then I broke my hand and I have a totally new left hand. And I mean, it's not my ankle's bionic, my hand is not, but I know.
How did you end up breaking your hand? What was that from?
I got attacked on the street. It was kind of a sad story.
Right.
Yeah. Nothing fun. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's okay. I had great surgeons.
Great.
France is wonderful for that. And, I had like a kebab hand with like shish kebab skewers in it for like a couple months. Anyway, wow. It was a whole thing. Like, am I going to play again? Existential crisis, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I did. And to get back up to speed, I kept getting more efficient and more efficient and more efficient. And I love neuroscience and I love mindfulness and meditation. And those are big practices in my life. So finally, after the first edition of the Viola Practice Camp, my friend, whose name is Gwen Codron, she's amazing. She's co-principal in Liverpool. She said, come teach my studio how to practice. So I started doing classes, and then it just refined and got smoother and slicker. And I'm a total nerd, so I love an acronym. And it became Spark Practice, which is basically just a system to accompany in the practice room based around 5 central pillars of music making. Spark. So we have S, sound, P, performance, A, attuned intonation, so also the harmonic context, R, rhythm, and K, kinetic integration. And the idea is that in every practice session, we visit all 5 pillars.
Yeah, great.
We tend to leave out performance and kinetic integration.
Yep.
And we don't know how to use rhythm, intonation, and sound, which, or sound, attuned intonation and rhythm. And so we're just up-leveling by a factor of about 10 the quality of our time in the practice room. And then, we have the practice timer, which is pulling from neuroscience and elite sports to use interval training. So on the website, there's a timer that's just a full practice session is a half an hour, and you do the rounds of 5 pillars, and then you take a little break because rest is important as well. Yep. And there's a journal page, and there's a whole thing, and it just it's really changed. It's changed my life, but it's also changed the lives of the people who do it and kind of think about it. And, what I really love is that the system is very flexible, and it's just sort of designed to be there when you want to come to it or not. And I will never say that Spark Practice is the only way to practice, because that's ridiculous. But,
if it was, then you've got it. It's great. But
I mean, it could be. Hey, okay, why not? But also like I don't have that ego, and I see the benefit in mixing things up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find it's interesting having those 5 pillars as well. And I think so many performers, they spend so much time on the just nuts and bolts, and they don't really think about kinetic integration, was it?
Yeah.
Kinetic
because kinetic is like movement and integration is you got to do it.
Yep. Sorry, I'm learning this too. That's all right.
No, you love
but it becomes, and definitely performance as well. We're actually practicing communicating with the audience. So, you know, music has to come into it.
It includes centering. I can go through the brief little idea of each pillar if you want.
Sure, why not? Yeah, go for it.
Let's do it. But yeah, again, like the big overarching idea is like we're doing this with intention.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole idea is that we want to be confident and neurologically safe when we get on stage. Mm-hmm. You know, because there's this whole thing of like, if you don't know anything, it takes up the entire bandwidth and we can't even do everything at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then as it gets better, the space that it takes up diminishes. So we need less space to execute what we're trying to do. And on performance day, like what we actually need to do, the thing is like this big and we still have this big tube. And that's where all the other stuff comes in. Like, oh my God, get off stage. This is going to be terrible. What are you doing? Everything sounds bad. Like you didn't practice enough. And so, you know, we need to really conscientiously.
I've never felt like that before, ever.
Magician Mark Burn.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Go. Sorry, I interrupted. Go.
It's totally fine. But that's the thing. Like anytime we talk about it, there's the little like, I've been there, because we all have, and we've all heard those things. And you know, those thoughts aren't real. Those thoughts are our brains telling ourselves like, we want to keep you safe. Don't go into danger. Like you don't have to do this to yourself. You know that it's going to be awful. Like save yourself, run, you know, like, and it's just a fundamental element of neurological safety. Mm. So if we can take that and be like, yo, I hear you. All this drama just means we're excited. We're actually going to do something pretty cool. And in it, you know, we have the tools to remind ourselves like, I'm safe. Mm. I want to be here. I have a story to share. I'm going to create in this moment. I'm safe. I want to be here. Like those are all of this is so we can get to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So sound is really just like our unique voice. And if we don't hear it before we play it and we don't know what we want it to sound like, we're not driving the bus.
I think that's a perfect example. Like Leon Fleischer, I think he said that, you know, you have to hear it before you play it. And if you don't play before you hear, what comes out is an accident. And you're just making accidents. So you're not actually creating, you're just hoping that something comes out. So,
well, listen, I mean, I have paid my rent on making accidents sometimes. You know?
Me too, yeah.
I mean, and also like a huge part of this is that we're all human, and you know, perfection is one thing, but what is not perfect?
But what is perfect though?
Yeah, also.
Like it's
I think I call it Goldilocks.
Yeah.
I call it Goldilocks. When it's just right, it's Goldilocks. And that for me is what like perfect can aspire to be. Yeah. Because, you know, perfect isn't like the loudest or the most in tune with my tuner or, you know, whatever. Like, I don't know, like toxic masculinity perfectionism. But no, like I call it Goldilocks because it's like, what's the right balance? What's the right recipe? What's the right dose? Like, you know, all of that. Okay, so sound being your unique voice, how you want to sound, what you want to hear should always be the guide because you can always find the technique to get there. Mm. Yep. And the inverse of that is that just because something's hard, we shouldn't compromise the music.
Yeah. Yep.
So you got to have your voice as like the guiding light of your sound.
Yep.
Because sometimes your voice in a certain piece is supposed to be like ugly and crunchy and whatever. And sometimes it's supposed to be lyrical and beautiful and the most wonderful thing in the entire world.
Yep.
And as an artist, like as a musician, we're responsible for developing that sort of like toolbox and painter's palette, whatever. And, you know, if it doesn't come from our voice, it'll never truly be us. Mm. So that.
I see that as well as it's a challenge, because I think listening to so many recordings and you have your teacher there and you hear them play and you go, wow, I want to sound like that. And I think it's sometimes a trap that students can get into is like they want to copy. They want to directly sound like that, and they never will. They'll always be a second-class copy because it's not them actually making the music, it's someone else. And so I love how you're saying you're finding your unique sound is like we all have a unique sound. We don't have to try and copy someone else to be good. We have to find.
Yeah, but also like, I don't know, I think there's a space for saying like, okay, for me, that's aspirational. How do I get from here to there?
Yeah, right.
And we do need that. We do need those like expanders. Yeah. We need that. And so I think there's a space for that, but it has to be like conscientious and intentional, right? But like, you know, to say, oh man, I'd really love to be able to play like that. And hopefully at the same time, I'm developing what I want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, and so also it's like with each, you know, inspirational musician, it's like, okay, well, what makes them an inspiration? Is it how they articulate? Like Kendrick Lamar, the rapper, has fantastic articulation. Mm-hmm. He's my inspiration for articulation. I'm totally serious. You know, and it's not even the classical music space. You know, and everybody has a thing, and it can come from everywhere. It could come from the bird outside. It can come like whatever. But our aspirational, inspirational musicians also, it's like, what are their major qualities? You know, a pianist is going to be stronger in Rachmaninoff than in Chopin, and you know, everybody has their own thing. Like there's a violist that's going to, you know, change the world with their Bartok, and their Hofmeister, I'm a little bit like, okay, you know, like whatever. Can I do it the same way? No, you know. And the whole thing about like finding your unique voice, like it has to come from you, but you also need to know how to play with other people and blend and all of that. And that's just like a way you use your voice.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So just like love semantics, but semantic time.
Nah, so yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the beginning of sound. You know, and it's one of my favorite things in sound is to take a recording that I love, that for me is like an aspirational recording, and dance and sing with it. And then I find out what I feel is different.
Yeah.
Because then I'll be like, no, Tabea, it's not like that. It's like this. And then also like, oh, hello. You know? But that helps me determine, oh, I think this phrase should be like this. You know,
which I think I think again, you bring out your unique voice, your unique perspective, which is super important, because imagine if we all had the same voice and the same perspective. How boring would that be? God, there'd be one way of doing everything, and So that's great that you can encourage your students and your clients to do that. That's amazing.
I encourage everybody to do that. All right. Yes, it's true. It's true. Okay. So performance. This is really the exercise in being yourself and showing it off. Mm-hmm. We need to be comfortable being ourselves, and that's the work of a lifetime, right? Mm-hmm. But then be neurologically safe enough to be able to show it off, so that we have the most of what we did in the practice room that comes with us on stage. Mm-hmm. So, you know, so it's like sharing a story, communicating these emotions in your unique voice from a place of safety. And so this is where we talk about the difference between performance brain and practice brain. Practice brain is the like curious detective. What's going on? How can I make it better? Like no judgment anywhere, because why? But the curious, you know, critic but productive critic, right? The nice, productive, like, let's do something to make it better. And
do you use those voices? Do you use those voices with your clients as well?
I was gonna say, depending on the president, I'd use it with pretty much any president. No, yes, I do.
Great, love it.
Yeah, because
I'm the same. I do that sort of stuff with younger kids as well. It's just like, hey, if we can't have fun, then then what's the point? So
it works for everybody also, because the whole thing is that when you come to my concert, I want you to feel like you're safe to feel.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I want you to feel comfortable having this conversation with me, and I'm responsible for your attention. And so if I consider you to be a beautifully flawed human who needs a little bit of time to just feel and listen to some stuff, then I also create the space for me to interpret something and also be a beautifully flawed human. Yeah. But my intention will always be to respect that and tell you a story.
Yeah, that's great.
So just as much as in music, it's not always serious, like mezzo forte, I'm comfortable, I have authority, you are going to listen to me, and I'm going to talk like this and occasionally accentuate certain points. We don't play like that, we don't talk like that. Like, why would we do that when it's important?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
great.
Yeah. So our creative brain, our performance brain, is really where this like ideation steps in, and it needs to be in like 4D, HD, colors, sounds, pictures, engage all the senses. And this is our visualization place. And then, when we do the visualization, performance creation, performance brain, then when we actually get on stage, we're stepping into the picture we've already created.
Yeah.
And neurologically, your subconscious knows kind of, but doesn't kind of know what's real and what's not. And so the story that you're telling it, you need to be responsible for the story that you're telling it and not be surprised by the story that comes in from the back end. Yeah,
totally. Well, that's going back to the Leon Fleischer quote. It's like, what comes out is not an accident. It's actually intentional, as you've been talking about. So.
And, if we go through the order of mastery, like, what is it? Unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence,
conscious competence,
conscious competence, unconscious competence. Yes.
I'd like to call it's the first one is bliss. So unconscious incompetence is bliss. The second one is conscious incompetence is pain. Then conscious competence is effort. And then unconscious competence is flow. That's all.
Got it.
There you go.
Why does it have to be pain?
Pain in terms of frustration. You've recognized what you can't do. You don't have the skills to do it. So, yeah, that's the model.
What's it called? What's it called when somebody is at like base camp and they have to get to the mountain and they haven't done the mountain yet?
I don't know. Shitting themselves?
Well,
maybe I would be.
Well, no, it usually takes the first half day to be like, oh, what I get myself into.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Take it or leave it. It's all good.
And so I think that but I think it can be painful and very frustrating. Absolutely. But when we get into unconscious competence, it can almost feel like an accident, but that's where flow, like you said, takes over. And it's actually not, but it's because the tissue of what we've prepared is so complex and so working and supported in so many different areas. You can sort of have this like lucid direction of creativity.
Yeah. Yep. Flow.
Right. So, but one of the biggest elements of performance as a thing is that we need to be able to practice switching from practice brain to performance brain, and really notice when we're in practice brain and notice when we're in performance brain. And this again intentionality. Like
Mm-hmm.
when we say, okay, I'm practicing now, my focus is there.
Yep.
This is why we do 5-minute chunks, because 5 minutes is a really long time if you're like super into it.
Yeah.
Most of the races in the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, don't last that long. So think about that. Like if you're putting the focus in of an Olympic athlete, 5 minutes is forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we're doing that, we're doing that. And if we're going into performance brain, we're committing to creation. We're committing to seeing what sticks to the wall. We're committing to like stepping into that universe that we're creating and going for it.
Mm.
Okay. And so as soon as practice brain starts to creep in, we got to say, up, cut, like, no, trash, out. And we have to be like the bouncer of our own mind.
Yep.
It's in French, it's called the videur. It's like the person who empties.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah, I don't know.
We call them the garbo in Australia. Takes out the garbage.
We need wonderful. Yeah. What's the person called that stands in front of a club and is like, you can get in, you can't.
That's the bouncer.
Yeah, bouncer. Okay.
Bouncer.
We need words from around the world of like, who lets you get into the performance brain club.
Oh.
But the more that we can practice being in one of those situations, the stronger each of those situations will be. And so this is one of the most essential elements of performance as a pillar. But then another thing that's outside of just the 5 pillars, but is really important and people aren't talking about it, is that in a sports training cycle, the conversion phase is the most important phase. You have the preparation phase and loading phase where you're just sort of like building mass and, your basic cardio and stuff like that. You have your conversion phase, then you have your competition phase, and then you have this big crescendo to the big competition, and then you have a recovery phase. The 2 phases that are actually most important in this are the conversion phase and the recovery phase.
Mm.
These are the ones that we don't talk about.
Yep.
Okay, so what the conversion phase really is we're slowly building our tolerance to stress so that when we get into the competition phase, neurologically, we are prepared to incorporate the stress in what we're doing and have continued and regular and consistent successes. Yeah. Because it's not a new mountain every time. It's something that we've built in little by little by little, and we're building our tolerance. And that's the conversion phase, when you're really going from like, okay, I can do this kind of in the practice room. I know what the notes are ish. Like I kind of have an idea of where I want to be stepping into it. And then we start to expose ourselves to stress a little bit. Sometimes that's a lesson.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's adversity training. Sometimes that's playing for our friends. Sometimes it's self-recording, which needs to happen really early, by the way, people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And, to have that like friendly little mirror and to just be like, okay, is what I think I'm doing what I'm actually doing?
Yeah.
That's what it's helpful for.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's it. That's what Don Green calls it, performance pressure hierarchy. So just building the slowly building up the pressure, and I call it bridging the gap between your performance or your practice space, which is calm and comfortable, to the scary performance stage. But we're creating increments in between that.
Yeah, it needs to happen a lot sooner than we think. Yeah. Because usually, and even, Don Green changed the industry, changed the music industry. However, it needs to happen sooner than when he says. Yeah. Because, and this is uniquely a parallel that I'm drawing from my elite sport experience. Yep. It's not golf, it's rowing. It's a, endurance sport at a very high level. And you're building that in, not from day 1, but maybe day 2. Because when you build these things together, the moment when it counts, it's already in there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we want. Like, I'm not a violist to play in my apartment. Yeah. I'm a musician because I want to have a musical conversation with you. Yeah. And if what I need to do that means that I feel safe to be able to get into that flow and that sort of like, lucid creation on a very solid foundation. Part of that foundation is my tolerance to stress. Yep. In France, I live in Paris, but in France, we call like getting on stage, it's a mise en danger. You're putting yourself in danger.
I was going to say, please translate that. So.
Yeah, you're putting yourself in danger. And we can call that, we can call it mise en danger, like also for lessons, for playing for your friend, like any sort of adversity training, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what it is. Neurologically, we're interpreting that as danger. So we need to have like little tiny danger doses from the very beginning so that when we get to the big stage, we know what it is. We know how to deal with it. I mean, it's going to be there. I'm not saying there's an antidote to performance anxiety or anything like that. No, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
However,
I think you're absolutely spot on. And
having the skill and the neurological safety is a whole other, more solid approach.
Yeah, totally. I think as well, it's particularly starting it really young is great so that kids can actually perform and have positive experiences. And the research shows that, if they have positive experiences early on, then they're less likely to have performance anxiety later on. I think as well, it's to create that neurological safety is that we can, if we're viewing as each performance as not a judgment on ourselves, and that's, that we are a great musician if we play perfectly, it's like, well, then you're running into dangerous territory. But definitely, I think, creating an environment where you can learn through performances and that you can grow through performances. And a mistake is not the end of the world, but it's something that you can use to grow and you can improve your skills with. So.
Yeah. One thing, there are so many ways to approach this pillar, and in Spark practice, the whole idea is that you visit each pillar every practice session and you use a specific strategy that you put into, each pillar for a practice session. And so you can basically look at anything through a lens of these pillars, because the entire goal is to have musical objectives that take us further rather than being stuck in like, oh, I have to do this etude. Oh, like, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate this shit. I'm like, I'm going to play my piece until the hard part and then play it again until the hard part.
And then stop and then put my case on, put my instrument away. Yeah.
Yeah. But, what I'm talking about as like integrating this earlier isn't necessarily only for children.
Yeah.
But it's also in our practice, like, especially as we have high stakes performances all the time, it's like, okay, when I'm building in a program, I'm building that in from the very beginning. And as I learn how to practice in a way that supports my being on stage, then it becomes more efficient. And I know the kinds of things that I need to build in to have that safety sooner. Okay, next up.
Well, I'll say one thing as well. It's like a great quote is practice like you play and you play like you practice. So incorporating that sort of how you would actually perform it. And I know I've heard that from my teachers before, but actually sort of consciously doing it and with intent and with conviction, there we go. And then you can actually build up some trust within yourself as well, because you like doing things and you're like, man, this is how I want to do it.
That's where confidence comes from.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you again.
Oh no, I dig it, man. I love this. We could do this all day. Probably will. No. But exactly what you're saying, like practice like you play and play like you practice with our two brains. We need to know how to use both our practice brain and our performance brain, because our practice brain is like
Very
neutralizing problems.
Yep.
Curious, identifying, zoom in, zoom out, dealing with specific problems. Performance brain is telling the whole story.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So practicing, first of all, if it's not musical, it doesn't count as practice.
Yeah. But
also we're learning how to do something and we're setting up the neurological pathways to do something the way we want to, which other people could think is the correct way or whatever, but the way that we want to, so that we can do it the first time. which means that we're not, and Noah Kageyama talks about this, and I mean, he's totally brilliant. But he talks about learning how to get better versus learning how to do something correctly the first time.
Yeah.
And so when we don't practice with the intention of how do I solve this problem so I can do it correctly, the way that I want to the first time,
yeah,
we're not getting better. We're getting this other thing that we're building in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So practice like I play, I'm practicing to get that, right the first time.
Yeah.
Right. The way I want it.
Yep.
And so that when I'm playing, it echoes the pathways that I've set up.
Yeah.
In the practice room.
Yeah.
So that's how I would.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're talking the same thing, just in slightly different terminologies, and that's, yeah.
We are. That means everybody's going to understand it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's great.
Totally. So attuned intonation, it's not just intonation, and it's not just intonation, but it might be depending on the context. Because there are very few, yeah, absolutely. There are very few right answers in intonation. There are usually only 3 right answers, which are, and I know you're probably like, that's not right, that might be right. No. The fundamental or the tonic.
I'm a trumpet player, so I'm always right. So.
Yeah, right into my ear as if you.
Sorry. That's what the screens are for. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a whole other conversation. Also, yes, but also, yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
This one goes to 11. I know. Why don't you just make 10 and then this one goes to 11? All right. Yeah, so it's the tonic, the dominant, and the subdominant. 1, 5, and 4. Those are black and white notes in any scale. Right? So our intonation is going to be based on those notes. All the other notes are colorful notes. Yay! They tell us how to feel. They tell us what to think. They tell us what mood we're in. But 1, 4, or 1, 5, and then 4 are the structure, architectural, foundational, we're going to hold you up and let you know that you're okay kind of notes, and so what my personal favorite thing to do, okay, so attuned intonation, those are really important, and they're usually plotted out over time. So like harmonic progressions or harmonic rhythm, something like that. This is really what intonation is about, is to say, okay, what's our journey? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? Are we going back home? Or are you taking me somewhere else? And then some composers like to hijack us and take us into weird keys totally suddenly. And some of them are like, no, okay, the king, you're going to be all right. I'm going to take you to 5 for a little while and then take you safely back to 1. And so all of that helps us in our interpretation, and also in making all of this a sparkly, beautiful structure, because we understand what's happening, over time in this harmonic structure. And that's why, and also if we're playing a melody, what scale tone or what's it, scale degrees are we playing? Is my 1 on 1? Is my 1 on 3? What?
Yeah.
And that's going to have a huge impact on how we play something as well. So just kind of being aware of where we are harmonically in relation to time and vertically. What's that geocache? That game where people go around the world and you're based on coordinates and clues. It's basically an international scavenger hunt, and you find little anyway, geocache. You can look at, so to have the best scavenger hunt find is an amazing journey and an amazing resolution, right? We need to have that in music, otherwise it's not very satisfying and we don't communicate the story.
Yep. Yep.
Right. So we need intonation helps us with that, because intonation helps us understand what the story is we're communicating and how we're doing it.
Yeah, totally.
So one of my favorite things to do is what I call, and get ready for your but this is like the whole drum set. The skeleton.
Oh, I think I've heard that one before. Yeah, that's the skeleton.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we talked about it last time.
We did.
But so scale,
Yep.
skeleton, magical powers combined will fix.
Now I get it. Oh, I just
I
realized.
know.
Oh, okay. Go on.
I'm so proud of this. And so what the skeleton actually does is when we're playing something, we remind ourselves what key we're in, because obviously we know, but sometimes we haven't looked, and it's helpful to go remind ourselves. And then we play either that scale, but we start with the tonic, the dominant, and the subdominant. The fundamental, the 1, the 5, and the 4. And we play just those notes. And we kind of see where our phrase is or what we're playing is kind of around that. And then we start to fill in the other notes. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I invite everybody to do who's watching is to play a phrase that you know really, really well, and then just spend a couple minutes doing the skeleton, know what key you're in, play the 1, 5, and 4, and then play it again. It's even more helpful if you remember to record it the first time and the second time and compare the difference. And you'll be amazed. So then you'll be skeletoning the crap out of everything around you.
I'll try my skeletons. Hang on, I better write that down. But I'll try
it.
Yeah, totally.
Record it.
Yeah.
And then if you're brave enough, share it.
Sure.
But yeah, no, seriously, like just take any phrase, turn on your recorder, play it through in performance brain, really play it, perform it. Then turn your recorder off, do the skeleton, 1, 5, and 4. Fill in the other notes if you want or not. Mm-hmm. Turn your recorder on again and play it again and see what changes. Usually it makes...
I'd imagine it would just give you a different perspective of what you're actually playing and where the foundations are and what sort of colours you can actually produce and things like that.
There's that. Yeah, absolutely. And also any questions of tonal relationships, any questions of things that are out of tune get fixed.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, cool.
Because when you're hearing the relationship and you know where you are in relationship to these black and white notes, these like architectural foundational notes, then the color makes sense. Yeah. So it's no longer a question of like, okay, I need to be 3 cents sharp on my tuner. It's where does this fit in you need part of that too.
Yeah. Or you go through... I remember going through university and they said, okay, the third has to be, if you're a major third, it's a bit lower and minor third's higher. And, and you sort of think that way to a certain extent to start off with. And you're just sort of thinking, well, it's the third, so it has to be higher. So you just push it higher without actually being conscious and really
without hearing it.
About hearing it and where it fits in and stuff like that. So, yeah, that definitely sounds like that would create much more awareness and understanding as opposed to just... this note's the third, so I have to play it higher or lower or wherever it is. I
mean, if I have any contribution to the world, it's probably the skeleton. I hope this part practice goes far, but like, if, like on my tombstone, it's like, creator of the skeleton.
There you go.
I'll be totally fine with that. Okay, so that's
hopefully that tombstone's a fair way off, so you got plenty of time to work on it.
I hope so. Also, whatever. I mean, we have to get through all 5 pillars so that if it happens later today, like we're good, we got our bases covered.
Yeah, we got. Please don't say that. It'll be fine. Cool. So we've got. What's next? R, rhythmic.
SPARK, sound, performance, attuned intonation, rhythm, and kinetic integration. We are now at rhythm.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is rhythm? Rhythm is something that we tend to use as a tool to clean other things. And then we forget about rhythm. Like this whole area, we just ignore him. Okay. And so rhythm is what? It's punctuating time. Mm-hmm. Kinda. Right? So I like to think of a painting has a frame, and they stretch the canvas around this frame, and then you can put whatever you want on the canvas. But without the frame, like the Mona Lisa would just be like on the floor, a bunch of goo. Okay, so we need this frame, we need this like structure to design space, to say like in this space there will be the Gioconda, the Mona Lisa. Mm-hmm. In this space there will be the water lilies. In this space there will be like somebody threw a bunch of paint at it, and Rothko band splotches, like all the things, and all of that has a place in the conversation, but they're all very different interpretations of space.
Yeah.
So that's like this. Ours is like this. Ours is time.
Yeah.
And we're like, we are time benders, but rhythm is the groove. Rhythm is the structure. Something, we know naturally that something in 3 moves differently than something in 4.
Yeah.
So, but we know that. But if we don't say it, like, how are we going to be able to like really integrate it and interpret that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. One of the basic stops on the rhythm train is like, what time signature are we in, and what kind of piece is this? Is it a rondo? Is it a march? Is it, some amorphous glob with dots in it? Is it a piece of paper with a bunch of like, is it a picture of a bunch of cows? Like, I don't know. I really do want to put out a series of a picture of a bunch of cows and have that played orchestrally.
I'd like to hear that composition. God, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. I think it'd be very moving.
Oh, there we go. God, gee.
Yep. I showed up today. So, in rhythm, like, we need to know what's happening on the larger scale. If we're playing a concerto, what the rhythm is and what the groove is in the third movement is going to be different than the second, different than the first.
Yeah.
And so that helps us pace our story arc.
Yeah. I think as well there's, quite often you sort of think rhythm, okay, I have to practice with my metronome and that will help my rhythm, or I have to subdivide. So it's that sort of, and they're generally the 2 that pop up, and then you're like, okay, what else can we do? So it's cool that you're digging much deeper. Yeah. Well,
and both of those things are really, really important. And I talk about in the musical pillar, I talk about like the subdivision ninja. Anytime you have a long note, you're subdividing the smallest parts. Yep. And anytime you have the smallest parts, you're over dividing. You're subdividing larger pulses.
Yeah.
And this is something that through the next pillar you've worked in to be able to really, fluidly navigate the 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
Yeah. So we'll kind of stop there for rhythm for today, but it's so sad because rhythm is so amazing. You can use it as there's so many strategies in rhythm to like help understand that, and also to help like clean and understand other elements. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things you can do in the rhythm pillar is take all of the bass notes of your piece and just play them one after the other at like 40 on your metronome. Mm-hmm. Have we ever done that? Probably not. Why is it helpful? Well, you just understood all of your harmonic progressions.
Yeah, totally.
Ta-da!
Yeah. So it all just fits in. It's not just like rhythm is separate and intonation is separate or harmony is separate.
Everything fits together. Yeah. Okay, so kinetic integration is the last pillar, and it's one that we really enjoy ignoring because it's usually what we're the worst at the beginning. When we do practice camps and practice intensives, everybody has sound off, video on, and you can always tell when people are working on kinetic integration because people fall over, run into walls, like it's wonderful. Yeah. And then at the end of the week, it's just like this like DDR, Dance Dance Revolution, perfect choreography. It's crazy. But the first day is brutal. So kinetic integration is really just trying to scramble the brain as much as possible with our voice, our mouth, our air, our ears, our hands, our feet, our body, mixing it all together in different combinations so that, again, we're integrating things as fully as we possibly can. So, one of the first things to do is listen to a recording, walk the tempo, or the big beats,
yep,
and clap along. And if you can, sing the note names.
Yeah.
But even just singing along with it.
Yeah.
And most people at some point will be like, whoa, I can't do that, or kind of fall over or whatever. We always remember that our piece, our tempo when we're learning something is the tempo where we can do the hardest part. That's our tempo for the whole thing.
Yep.
Because if we do something and then we slow down so that we can do that hard part and then speed it up again, we have just taught ourselves the wrong tempo relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. And that will come out, and I've heard it.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
I've heard it from big people.
Yeah.
And I'm still totally impressed, but also like, oh.
That's their musical interpretation. So.
But again, our musical interpretation guides what we do, and we find the technique to get there. We're not, totally stuck in and hindered by
totally
things.
Yeah.
So in kinetic integration, we have it's sort of the next level learning and leaning into the awkward and really letting the comfort zone be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
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 Yes. And, from the mental side, we know that our brain wants to keep us safe. So it will protest violently when it feels like we're not being safe.
Yeah.
Because it uses a lot of energy and it feels scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you do that sort of practice right from the word go, or is that something once you've actually learned a piece, or you've sort of half learned it, you've sort of got some of it under your fingers, would you then start to do that, or is this right from the word go, you just start it straight away?
All the way.
All the way. Wow.
Yeah, because I use it for my warm-up. I use it for, if I have a gig coming up and I don't have a lot of time to practice, I'll use it for that. When I have time to prepare a big program, I use it straight up. Because the beauty of it is that in the sparks that you have in a practice session, when you're visiting your 5 pillars, you can put any different kind of spark in. You can put in practice strategies, specific practice strategies into a spark that are really advanced because you really know your piece, or you can put ones in that are really fundamental, like this baseline thing.
Yeah.
That might not be doing something, that might not be something that you're doing when you're refining muscle memory of something that you know by heart, where you can say, oh, I know that the sforzando on the 3rd 16th note of the 4th measure is more of an airspeed thing rather than a pressure thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's a level of understanding and mastery that is different than whatever. And, a great strategy that you can use in, any pillar, but if you want to use it in sound, is to go through and talk through the articulation, and it works in kinetic integration as well, is to talk through the articulations of your piece.
Yeah. We definitely do that as brass players.
Accent. Yeah. And we forget that so much of this can happen off the instrument as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that's a big one as well. And that comes back to what we said right at the start, is like, it's not just about repetition, mindless, quick, I'll play it. Oh, I made a mistake. Let's just play it again. It's that thought process in between those repetitions and making sure that it's intentional. Yeah, stuff like that.
So we don't need to practice a lot. We just need to practice with intention and equip ourselves with good strategies.
Yeah.
And when we have these sort of ideas, whether it's specifically Spark practice or another kind of intentional practice. This is the most comprehensive intentional practice system that I've found so far, because if another one existed, I wouldn't have to make it. I wouldn't have needed to invent it because I hate redundancy, but I really do. Really do. But any kind of intentional practice, like, it's gonna make you faster, safer, stronger, more thoroughly, and more quickly than any other kind of practice.
But that takes focus and concentration, and I think that's where it's like, it's not easy to practice with so much focus. Like, deliberate practice is 100% focus, and to do that is quite a challenge. And it's great that you're doing those in 5-minute intervals as well. Like, I encourage my students to do that as well, just so that they feel that they can actually focus, or just build that focus, because it's only in small, manageable chunks. So
yeah, absolutely. And also, you need a break. You need to rest. Like, I posted about this, and in every elite practice or training plan, rest is a critical element.
Yep.
And actually, for me, like, I am a tired person. I do a lot, and I am tired a lot. And
I've got 2 young kids as well, so.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Like, that's the power to you.
We're all tired though, so yep.
Yeah. Well, and actually through Audition Club, which is a whole other thing, someone reflected to me, like, why don't you determine how much you can practice based on how much you can rest? And now that's exactly what I do. Like, my practice schedule comes from how much I'm going to be able to rest, because that's going to tell me how much productive practice time I have.
Yeah. Well, you're kind of reverse engineering your schedule. You're putting in rest first and then putting in your practice, rather than practicing and then hoping you get in as much rest. So,
well, if I go from silence to something else, I hope that it's meaningful.
That's nice. Yeah. I like that.
So it makes sense to do that. Otherwise, I'm spinning my wheels, and if I find that I'm my, like, not self, it's when I'm tired, but I haven't acknowledged that I'm tired, and I just kind of keep going, and I feel like I don't know if I'm pleasing people, and I don't know if what I'm doing is the right thing, and I'm trying really hard, but it's not connecting. It's kind of like in baseball. Like, you can swing, but you really need to feel the connection between the ball and the bat. I played a lot of sports, people. Sorry.
I've never played baseball before, but I'll take your word for it. So
yeah, or when you're having a conversation with somebody, and you're trying to communicate something, and you can feel that they understand you. You can feel that they hear, like, there's a different quality to it. And if we don't prioritize being able to listen for that and practicing that quality, and connecting that intention with the other side, be it our work or our relationships or sleep or whatever, like, good sleep is important.
Totally.
That's a connection.
Yeah.
Then, or fun, we need to go have fun also. We need to go enjoy things. Like, it's not all about being serious. Like, if you do your work with intention, you'll go further, and it'll be done, and you can have confidence that you've done your work. And then you go just, like, enjoy. And if you can do that with this, again, like, big word of the day, intention, then the quality of your life improves, the quality of your opportunities improve, the quality of the conversations you have with your teacher, quality of your performances, all of that just levels up. And it's so satisfying to see that, in my students. There's another one who just aced her grade 8 exams, just aced them.
Nice.
And I mean, she did the work.
Yeah.
I helped her learn how.
Yeah.
But people are just like knocking it out of the park, and they know that it's not an accident. And they know that they can do it again.
And that's the thing. It isn't an accident. It's been proven through science time and time again. And I think providing those structures, spark practice, or like I use self-regulated learning as well, and deliberate practice, and that's all these structures there can provide that really solid framework for you just to excel at whatever you want to. But absolutely, I totally agree with you that you do need the intention behind what you actually do in order to perform your best. So I think that's been a huge takeaway for me from today. So, all right. Well, Sarah, I think we've been talking hour and 15. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it and love hearing about spark practice and how you incorporate it into your teaching and how other students can incorporate that into their practice as well. So thank you so much. Now, how do we get in touch with you if we want to learn more?
Well, Spark Practice is on Instagram and Facebook. And Instagram, I have a lot of practice tips, thoughts about general things, and a lot of little videos basically of me being tired and how I think that's funny.
Unpacking boxes as well. I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we're human. Like, let's be human and also be great musicians. I mean, that's part of it, right? Totally. So there's that. And then there's the practice timer and journal page on the website. And there are classes coming up of the 5 pillars where we go in depth with kind of the philosophy behind them and specific practice strategies. And then coming out in the fall will be a full 12-week training cycle, going from just meeting a piece to completely ready to perform or record. And it goes through all these different sections of goal setting and setup, research, loading and installation, practice intensive, conversion, test drive and refine, cool down, final prep, the big event, recovery, reward, you did it.
Yeah.
And so that'll be coming out in the fall. And there's a combination of online courses and calls of live support. And we're just welcoming people into this community. And it's amazing to see how much success it's brought to so many people.
Yeah, fantastic, Sarah. Love it. Love what you're doing. And it's been great to see Spark Practice a little bit in action as well through your videos and online content. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great talk, and yeah, hope we can do it again sometime soon.
Oh, I hope so too. Thank you, Mark. I love what you're doing. When we met, your talk was so inspiring, and to really connecting people with why they're doing what they're doing and help them, navigate that and feel like they know how to get up in the morning and really connect with productive practice, and this sort of deliberate conversation was really inspiring and continues to be. So Thank you so much. I'm awesome. Glad that we're on the same team.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
I always love talking with you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I will be following more of your stuff, but all the best, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice day. Happy practicing.
Yeah.